In Chapter 2, we are going to be looking at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational numbers. A rational number is a number that can be written as a ratio. We're probably more comfortable thinking of numbers that are fractions, like 1/2, or 1/3, 1/8, 2/3. The other way that we often see rational numbers are in the decimal form. So we would have maybe 0.5, we could have 0.33 repeating, we could have 0.25, and so on. These numbers are all able to be written in a ratio form. With decimals, we talk about two kinds of decimals, those that terminate and those that repeat. A terminating decimal is like 1.5 or 25 hundredths or 50 hundredths or 10 and 625 thousandths. Those decimals end. There's not a remainder that makes another number like you have with a repeating decimal, such as that 333 repeating, or 666 repeating, or 151515 repeating. So just notice the difference with those. To write a rational number as a decimal, we simply use division. This problem, I would just set it up to divide 6 by 5, and I'm going to get that 6 will go into that one time, or 5 will go into 6 once. I subtract, put a 0, bring down the 0, and 5 will go into 10 two times. So my decimal form is 1.2. And it would be negative because the 6/5 was negative. For my second problem, there's kind of two ways you could do this. You could just focus on the fraction part and convert the 3/8 to a decimal and then add 7 to that. Or you could make the fraction an improper fraction. It's a mixed number, make it an improper fraction. So I would go 8 times 7, which is 56, and then add the 3. So I would get 59/8, and then use division. So 59 divided by 8. 8 goes in there 7 times. So we get 56, we subtract, and we get 3. So our decimal point is going to go there. Bring down the 0. 8 will go into 30 3 times. Then we have 24, subtract that, we get 6. So we're going to get a 0. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 56, and then we get a 4. Bring down a 0. 8 will go into 45 times. And that is where our decimal terminates. Now because we had negative 7 3/8, this will be negative 7 and 375 thousandths. We also want to be able to go the other direction, where when we are given a decimal, that we can write that as a fraction. And to do that, we always use multiples of 10 for our denominator. In our first example, there is one number behind the decimal point, so we're going to have a denominator that will be 10 because that number is in the 10th place. You can also think of it as we're going to have a 1 with 1 0 because there's one number, and that would all be all we have to do. This is already a simplified fraction, so our fraction form would be just negative 7/10. In our next example, this is 125 thousandths, so we are going to have 1,000 in the denominator, And then we can simplify this fraction, and 125 can be divided by 25. It will go in there 5 times, and 1,000 can be divided by 25. It is going to go in there 40 times. And then we can simplify this one more time because 5 can be divided by 5 and 40 can be divided by 5. So we would get 1/8. And that would be our decimal in a simplified lowest terms fraction. In our last example, we're going to have, I would just write this as a mixed number to start with, where we'll have -10 and then 25 hundredths. Our 25 hundredths can be simplified because by dividing both by 25, so we would get -10 and 1/4. To put rational numbers in order, you either need to put the number in a common form, like all fractions with a common denominator, or I think into decimal form, which is my preferred method. I think it's just easier and we can compare. So I've done a little bit of math on the side here, and this -13/10 will be -1.3 in decimal form. -2 1/5 is -2.2, and -2/11 is going to be -0.1818 repeating. And then of course this is already in decimal form, so we have -8/10. Now I can line up the decimal point and I can see that, well, first of all of these numbers are negative, so the biggest number is actually going to be the one that is closest to 0, which would be -2/11. So I will put that to the left here. I'm sorry, to the right. And then to the left of that, the next biggest number would be -8/10. To the left of that is going to be -1 3/10. And the number that is farthest from 0 is -2.2. And so this would be these 4 rational numbers in order. I could have started from the left by going with the number that is the farthest from 0 or the least, and then gone to greatest, but I ended up going from greatest to least. Anyway, put your numbers, your rational numbers, in decimal form when you want to put them in order. Now you want to go on and try some practice problems. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to talk to Miss Eastman.